Okay, so we've all seen this flood of AI agents lately, right? But what if the next big leap isn't just another agent, but a whole new operating system for them? That's what we're diving into today. It's a really cool piece of AI architecture called Artemis City, and it's being pitched as exactly that, an OS for AI.
But before we get into that, let's talk about a real problem. You've probably played around with AI agents like AutoGPT. And yeah, they're super promising, but they've got some serious limits. You know how they can get stuck in these expensive, endless loops, or how their memory is just terrible? They forget everything from one session to the next. So it really makes you wonder, right? What's the next step in their evolution?
So to figure that out, we're going to take a quick tour. First, we'll nail down the problem with today's agents. Then we'll get into this whole new OS idea. After that, we'll peek inside the architecture, check out how it learns in a totally unique way, and wrap up with a look at what's next on the roadmap. All right, so the core problem that Artemis City is trying to solve, it's all about a shift in scale. Think about it. The first wave of AI agents, they were amazing for sure, but they were basically lone wolves, right? Trying to do everything by themselves. The real challenge, the next big frontier, is figuring out how to get from that single agent to a whole society of agents that can actually work together.
And this slide just lays it out perfectly. On one side, you got these agent wrappers. Think AutoGPT. It's basically one single AI stuck in a loop with a terrible memory, making all sorts of mistakes because it's trying to be a jack of all trades. Now look at the other side. That's the Artemis City way, an agentic OS. It's not one giant agent, no. It's a system that orchestrates a whole team of specialists. It gives them a rock-solid shared memory and a safe sandbox to play in. It's really the difference between one stressed-out worker and a super efficient, well-run factory.
Okay, so this is where we get to the big paradigm shift. The core idea is just stop trying to build a better agent. Instead, start building better infrastructure for all agents. See the difference? That's the huge conceptual leap that Artemis City is built on. The main metaphor here is actually super simple, but it's really powerful. Think about your computer's operating system, right? Like Windows or Mac OS. It doesn't do the work. It manages all the programs that do the work. Well, that's what an agentic operating system, or AOS, does. It manages a whole ecosystem of AI agents. It's the traffic cop, handing out resources, scheduling jobs, and making sure they all play nicely together without, crashing everything. So the big question is, how does it pull this off? Well, it really boils down to three core innovations. First up, there's an OS-like kernel, which is basically the conductor of the whole orchestra. Second, it's got this hybrid memory system. Think of it as two brains in one. And third, and this is the really wild part, it has a learning engine that lets its memory actually rewire itself as it learns. Don't worry, we're going to break down each one of these. All right, time to pop the hood and see how this thing is built. We're going to take a little tour of the architecture, and to make it easier to grasp, we'll use this cool metaphor of a cognitive city. So right at the heart of this city, you have the kernel. You can think of it as the city planner, or even better, the conductor of an orchestra. Now, the kernel doesn't play any of the instruments itself. That's what the specialized agents are for. Its job is to direct the whole show. It tells everyone when to come in, what to play, and make sure all those separate parts come together to create one beautiful, coherent solution. And here's how that whole process works step by step. It's super logical. First, a goal comes into the system. The kernel looks at its big list of agents, its agent registry, and says, okay, who are the right specialists for this job? Then, those agents dive into the shared memory to get all the context they need. And finally, with the kernel leading the way, they work together to come up with the solution. It's just a really clean, efficient, and scalable way to get things done. Okay, let's talk about that memory system, because this is really cool. It's a hybrid system, so it's kind of like having two different types of brain working together. On one hand, you have the Obsidian Vault. Think of this as the city's library. It's super structured, everything's neatly organized in linked files, totally human readable. But then you have the Superbase Vector Store. This is more like the city's Google. It might not have that perfect, logical structure, but man, is it fast. It's amazing at finding related ideas and concepts, giving the system that powerful, intuitive, associative memory. And get this, to make sure you can see what's going on, there's a part called the visual cortex. What it does is give you a real-time map of the city's brain, its knowledge graph. So developers, and even other AIs, can literally see the system's thought process as it happens. You can watch how ideas connect and memories form. It's like having a window straight into the AI's mind.
Pretty amazing.
Okay, brace yourselves, because this next part is where things get genuinely mind-bending. Artemis City isn't just about shuffling agents around. No. It's about creating a system that can actually learn and change its own internal wiring. And the magic behind this is a concept called Hebbian plasticity.
So this idea comes straight out of neuroscience. You've probably heard the saying, neurons that fire together wire together. It's a simple idea, right? If two brain cells are active at the same time, the pathway between them gets stronger. Well, Artemis City takes that exact same principle and applies it to ideas. If the system uses two different pieces of knowledge together to solve a problem successfully, the connection between those two ideas gets stronger in its memory.
So what does this mean in practice? It means the AI's memory is not some static, dead database. It's a living, breathing, evolving network. Every single time the system succeeds, its knowledge graph changes just a little bit. The connections that led to that success, they become like cognitive superhighways, making it way easier to find that solution next time. And the connections that don't get used or that lead to dead ends, they just fade away. They get weaker over time. There's a quote from this source material that I absolutely love, and it's this: "Memory without reorganization is just a database." And that just hits the nail on the head, doesn't it? It perfectly explains why this is such a huge leap forward. Real intelligence isn't just about hoarding facts. It's about constantly reorganizing what you know into a better, more efficient structure based on what works. But of course, there's a big potential problem here. You don't want the AI learning the wrong things, right? That's where a super important safety feature comes in, called a validation gate. Basically, the system only strengthens those connections when the final outcome is confirmed to be a success. This is a huge deal. It stops the AI from reinforcing a hallucination or a mistake, making sure it only learns from its wins, not its failures. And that's how it gets more and more reliable over time. So where does something this advanced go from here? What's next? Well, the roadmap is just as ambitious as everything we've seen so far. The goal is to push it even further, to make it act even more like a real, living, biological brain. The plans are all about adding more of these brain-like features. For example, reinforcement-based routing. That's just a fancy way of saying the system will learn on its own which agent is best for any given task. Then there's inhibitory control. That's basically the AI's ability to focus and not get distracted, just like our brains do. They're also planning for memory decay, so we can gracefully forget old information that's no longer relevant. And maybe the coolest of all, plastic workflows, which would let the system actually evolve its own methods for solving problems, inventing new and better ways to work over time. When you boil it all down, the ultimate goal here isn't just to make an AI that's a walking encyclopedia, it's to build a system that can fundamentally rewire its own mind. A system that doesn't just learn things, but is constantly learning how to learn better. And all of this leaves us with a pretty profound question to chew on. If you have an AI system that can learn, adapt, and literally rebuild its own mind based on its experiences, what does that system eventually become? That question, well, it takes us way beyond engineering and into something a whole lot bigger. Thanks for sticking with me on this one.